A thing that I tend to do is I look at, okay, what are similar businesses in other industries doing? What are the proven best practices? So if you want to make your product more habit forming, for example, you're going to look to companies like Peloton, like Apple Fitness, like Strava. They don't compete with us, but they have a similar challenge, which is get people to do a thing they know they want to do, they want the outcome of, but it's hard.
Welcome to Launch Stories. We're all about connecting and educating entrepreneurs. Studio C at Cowork Chilliwack is located in the traditional and unceded territory of the Stalo people. We're thankful to be able to live, work, and create in this beautiful area. Thanks to our sponsors for helping us put these monthly events on, the Chilliwack Economic Partners, the Chilliwack Innovation Network, and the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. And thanks to our partners for organizing Launch Stories every month, Cowork Chilliwack, Currency Marketing, and Zynum Ventures. This is not a golf course. You can you can clap. Thank you very much. And special thanks to Elise McAlpine for running all of the AV equipment and recording the show tonight. And you can see her up here. Today we are talking about founding, building, and scaling online businesses with Rick Kettner. Please give a warm Launch Stories welcome to Rick.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so you are in the hot seat officially. We did have a pre-meeting, so we've cleared all of this because I really wanted to get this story right. You've come from some non-traditional beginnings, and I found that super interesting. So, not to call you out or anything, but you left high school in grade 11.
I did.
And you come from a long tradition of that. Your father and your grandfather also found school not the place they wanted to be and wanted to get on with life. And so tell me about that.
Sure. So going back in time to the late 90s, this was kind of the dot-com boom was all happening. And I was in grade 11 at the time. I distinctly remember having a conversation with my dad where I was just kind of venting about this awkward period where I was spending all of my spare time building websites and studying the latest tech. Handheld computers were a big thing at the time. And I was frustrated to be kind of stuck in school for 2 more years at a time that felt transformative. The internet was kind of taking off in the mainstream. Again, things like handheld computers and other technologies were emerging.
So what year would have that been?
Would have been, I want to say 97 or 98, right in that ballpark. I would have graduated in 2000.
Thick of the dot-com boom and the money and all of this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I was just casually kind of venting more than anything without purpose and just saying, this is kind of unfortunate that I've got 2 more years stuck in school before I can actually do this full time. And he asked a question that I did not expect. And I've had a few conversations with him since, and there's no clarity on exactly what the intent behind the question was. I don't think he intended it for necessarily it to be this life-transforming question, but he just said, have you considered leaving school early? And basically the moment I heard that, it was just like, okay, that's what's happening. I'm definitely doing that. And it's just a matter of how do I pull that off? And it took a few months to convince my mom that this was a good idea. For obvious reasons, she didn't think that this was necessarily the smartest move, or at least wanted the best for me and wanted to make sure I was thinking about this carefully. And eventually, I want to say 3 or 4 months later, I left school. Fortunately, it all worked out. I had long since told all my friends I was leaving school, and I think they were starting to wonder why I was still around. But yeah, so I got to leave school and really focus on business more or less full time at that point.
So back to your father and your grandfather, were they both entrepreneurs of sorts, or were they? What was their vocation? Yeah,
so my grandfather left school in grade 8. He had to. His father passed away when he was young, and he had to basically provide for the family or help. So he left school out of necessity in grade 8. My dad left school in grade 11, having a much more stable upbringing. He had the opportunity to basically make the choice to pursue business, entrepreneurship. And so that is the decision he made. And even factoring all this in this history, I did not consider this an option for myself until that question had been asked. I just, that was a thing that was possible in the distant past, but not today.
Right. Yeah, especially in your grandfather's era, it was it wasn't a done deal that you were going to finish high school.
Exactly.
Right? You were going to work
Yeah.
on the farm or help in the family business, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned it, but you were into tech at the time, and your thing was the Palm Pilot.
Yeah, I was building a few different online communities and news sites around specifically the Palm Pilot. Eventually, Windows CE, Microsoft's kind of attempt to do the same thing was growing in popularity. And so I built some decent online businesses. It was kind of a solo entrepreneurial thing at the time, but was getting paid by advertisers to build and support these communities. Jumping forward a little bit, I had an opportunity to attend a computer conference in Chicago. And my dad was very proactive about that sort of thing early on, making sure I wasn't just leaving school kind of blindly. It was, what are your plans? What are your goals? How is this going to work? And he was very proactive in taking me to things like conferences. And at a conference in Chicago, I met up with a company out of Fort Worth, Texas, and they were basically the App Store before the App Store. They purchased first from another business this basically app store for Palm OS computers, and they were looking to dominate the market. And they had multiple rounds of funding. The numbers that I remember hearing is 16 million put in on 2 separate occasions. This was the dot-com boom.
So you were telling me all this last week, and I'm going,
yeah.
The guy's 16. He's basically created an influencer. Well, before that, created his own forum and website and so forth. But you sent me a picture today that made it real.
This is me heading off to Texas.
So someone who has now a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, even them coming to me at this stage and saying, I'm packing my bags and my very secure, fancy business briefcase and heading to Texas. I don't know if that would have, but yeah, obviously you were on a mission.
Yeah. So I met the company in Chicago, and they asked me to come out and work for them. They had, I want to say, it's hard to remember all the details, but I want to say like a 40-person team. It was kind of being run by the investment firm that put all this capital into it. And I got to move down. I was living out of an extended stay hotel. I was traveling to work at 7 a.m, arriving back around 7 p.m. in the evening, then working on my stuff in the evening while watching all the late night shows and getting no sleep, and then doing that again. And then the weekend was a recovery time or attempted
just imagining 16-year-old me with access to like a mini bar and unlimited stuff in the fridge.
It's too much pizza. I think I put on a good 20 pounds in 4 months. It was not a healthy period of my life.
And so that was Palm Central.
Palm Central is the company they bought, and they turned it into Handango.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of the name, but that's where they went with it. Mm-hmm. They wanted to be multi-platform and kind of tackle both Palm and Windows CE side, hence the going more generic, I guess. But yeah, they were directionally correct, but they were early.
Right. That happens to so many startups,
it does.
Right? And so you had a front row seat to this. From my understanding, you were there 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
What was kind of the big takeaways from that period?
If I'm being brutally honest, I think I was vastly overpaid. I think it was one of those times where it was just a period of everybody was throwing money at everything. But it was really interesting to see what was possible, both through, obviously at the time it was considerable investment being put into these businesses, but to kind of get that early look at, what constitutes a good business. They were obviously trying to completely corner the market, trying to leverage network effects and those sort of things, to just see that, okay, this is the kind of capital that can get poured into a really interesting business opportunity was hugely eye-opening. And coming from a background up until that point, I'd largely just done my own thing. I hadn't had a chance to coordinate with other people, so it was a great opportunity to see how much more you could accomplish with a team of talented people.
Wow.
Those are some of the things that jump out right
I didn't ask you what position. They didn't make you CEO.
They did not.
Okay. What was your role?
I don't think I could actually define it. I think it was largely based on the fact that I was running these communities and these platforms. I was helping out however I could, but I think a big part of it was just they wanted to bring someone like me in-house who was kind of on the bleeding edge of studying all these things and to have that perspective in the room. And that's where I say I don't know that it was worth it from a financial perspective, but there was money to throw around and they valued having me there. And it was for me, it was an incredible opportunity. So I just enjoyed it.
So you headed back home,
Yeah.
But you were still continuing to run these websites.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I asked you, what is the revenue model? And it was banner ads and so forth. And you're
Yeah.
making $2-3 grand US a month as a 16-year-old.
Back then, that was a lot of money.
No doubt. Even today for a 16-year-old, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you attempted, you said 10
I call them
failed
semi-failed,
business.
yes. Yeah, you could call them semi-successful.
What were some of those businesses?
Everything from online courses for doing magic and card tricks I was into for a while there, a lot of the stuff with the handheld computers, a lot of just trying affiliate type stuff out there that existed. Basically just trying everything I could to both see what would be successful, and I probably didn't know it at the time, but looking back on it now, it was really a chance just to try and learn from a lot of different experiences. And then eventually, after a lot of those businesses, and I call them semi-failed because they didn't really scale or grow. They were lucrative for me as an individual, but they didn't really go anywhere beyond that. Then I had an opportunity to co-found a business with Jared, who happens to be here. I met up with him. He was not my initial drum instructor, but
Well, let's stop you there. I'm going to back you up a little bit. You're jumping slides.
I'm getting too far ahead.
But that's okay. So today, when you think of, okay, I can spin up a website, I'll go to something like Squarespace or Wix or WordPress or something. But back then, you would have been having to be able to figure out setting your own web server and coding your own websites. How did you learn all of that?
that was very much just pure interest and passion. Like when I was still in school, I was just bringing these big books on what was then not Adobe, but Macromedia, Dreamweaver, how to build websites. So I'm sitting in class and ignoring everything that's happening up front, but just studying this because these were the things that were very interesting to me. So basic web design, basic graphic design, later would have been video editing and that sort of thing. But it was just, the internet was this brand new thing. And so it was just pure passion of,
so you're sitting in the back of the classroom with this big tome of a thing.
Yeah, these books
the guy
were
next to you has got a Hot Rod magazine hidden inside his. but you sounded like you really found your thing early. And
just pretty fortunate that way.
Glommed onto that. And everything seems to be, as we piece together all the things, many of it is being in the right place at the right time and circumstances and so forth. And now we can get to the drum lesson. So you came back, your brother was a drummer, I believe, and he had discarded his drums and you saw some dust on them and thought, I'm going to learn drums. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I came back and my younger brother had a drum set up, and for whatever reason, I never thought, like, my parents were very supportive of all the different hobbies we had, but for some reason, I just thought drums were off limits. It's this very loud, obnoxious instrument, and I didn't know that we were allowed a drum set. And all of a sudden, I see he has a drum set. I'm like, okay, I'm definitely doing that. So I got into playing the kit. Fortunately, before we returned it, it was a rental, and then ended up getting a kit and started taking private lessons. And just to connect some of the dots here, I was taking private lessons for a couple of years. My teacher retired, went to take on a different career. And Jared, who would go on to be my co-founder in Drumeo, he took over the student pool from my former instructor, and he kept calling me over and over again, probably for a month and a half every once in a while, just like, you're going to come out and take lessons. And I think at the time I was in White Rock, and I originally took lessons in Langley. It was just a bit of a trek, and so I was kind of brushing him off for a while there, but he was very persistent, and eventually I'm like, okay, I'm going to come take some lessons with Jared. And right away we hit it off. We both had an entrepreneurial spirit. He was selling drum gear on eBay, and he was doing sales for his family's business. And I still remember to this day very vividly, we decided we were going to go and actually meet and discuss business ideas. We went to the Boston Pizza in, I want to say, Aldergrove. And I remember bringing my notepad like a geek and just like ready to take ideas. And we just discussed a whole bunch of different possibilities. As it happens, I had filmed a couple of videos that I posted to what was called the Pearl online discussion forum about some obscure technique or two. And somebody on that forum said, oh, you should charge money for this. And here I am trying all these different businesses, and for whatever reason, drumming hadn't seemed like a business thing to me until that person mentioned it. And I don't remember the exact timing, but that came up in conversation, no doubt, with Jared. And he was the far better drummer, and he had a good grasp of business, having his dad be a business owner as well. like mine, and we just kind of hit it off. And we decided, okay, he's the actual skilled drummer that should be doing videos. And I had obviously some experience with building websites and doing online marketing. And so it was very much just this natural opportunity where he filled in some critical gaps for me. I filled in some gaps for him. And it was a very natural partnership. And up until that point, as I kind of alluded to, I'd been largely kind of a solo entrepreneur, aside from my experience as an employee in Texas. And I think that was a really important point for me to realize, okay, the value of having somebody that fills in very critical gaps and who's there to have energy when you don't, and when things go in ebbs and flows, and to find that person who's, has a similar view and a similar passion, but has some key strengths that I lacked. And that was kind of the next era in many ways. I think that is a huge factor in ultimately that being the business that took off. And as you alluded to earlier, there's a lot of circumstantial things too. Timing is huge. A lot of different things. I think that'll be a recurring theme.
Yeah, but even like finding this perfect match, because many businesses that fail in partnership are two people that have so much in common that there is no like holes that each one is filling, and they end up in a conflict and areas of the business that nobody wants to take care of. And so like this business, and I put in air quotes, like what was it at the beginning? Was it just a couple guys working together, or did you know right away we need to incorporate this and form a name and a company? Like what was that part of it like?
I think it was very just kind of one step at a time, to the best of my memory. I was renting Jared's basement suite at the time. Or at least that happened shortly thereafter. And so then we're in close proximity and figuring things out. We immediately wanted to film some products and actually get this thing going.
Wow, he was selling you a lot of drum lessons if you moved in.
But we're connecting on all these ideas, and we're just, I think we right away came up with a couple of product ideas. We filmed one. We worked with a contract video editor. He was very excited to film it, but not so good on the follow-through of editing. And I remember that being a tedious process, but we eventually got this thing edited and ready to go. And then we just used all the kind of business and online marketing experience that I had to put some sales pages together and emulated what we saw working out there, and started to gain some momentum. And a lot of lessons along the way that were kind of big breakthroughs, and we can maybe dive into some of that. But it was very just
to put us on a timeline. What year is this?
I want to say around 2003, 2004. Okay. So before the company was incorporated in 2005, it was just...
And also before video on the internet was really viable. If you were, just a slight aside, graphic design company, I had a couple guys who were in web development. They created this show, a fewseconds.com, a website, and we did an episode that they put online, and we were self-hosting it with a T1 line in here with TELUS. And somebody posted it on MSN forum, and it went viral in the day, and the next bill was $20,000 from TELUS. And we shut that website down immediately, and I negotiated that down. But that was the reality of trying to play video on the internet. We think of today with YouTube and others, especially YouTube, of course. But so how did you think about distribution? Was it just like a downloadable or a product of some sort? Yeah,
we went through a few different cycles, and this is 20 years ago, so it's hard for me to piece together all the details. For me, initially, when I was trying to productize those first few videos I created online, it was downloads, just downloading a zip file of Real Media Player, something way, way back in the day, right? YouTube, like you said, didn't exist yet. And then we pivoted to, it's hard because we went back and forth, and I'll get to that. But we did a DVD product. We did a couple DVD products. We continued to play with download products. Eventually, we had the realization, two key realizations. One was going more mainstream and not just focusing on these obscure techniques, but really trying to develop something more broad. We launched something called the Rock Drumming System, which was our first very mainstream product. And immediately in our first day, we did better than our previous month. And the second day matched that. And obviously as a launch, but still really impressive numbers. So there was a sense of, okay, we have to go mainstream. But secondly, one thing we realized at that point in history was a large physical box set product had a much higher perceived value. And so we went from digital to now selling physical product because of the significantly higher perception of value. You could charge $200 or $300 for a big 30 DVD box set kind of thing.
Sure. I remember you'd buy a box of Photoshop, and they'd charge you $800. And then if you wanted the next box of Photoshop, it was an upgrade for $400 or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. So we ended up going to physical before eventually cycling back to the online subscription model, which is, of course, far more kind of standard today, but was not at the time. But yeah, you go through a lot of technological challenges along the way. Downloadable video at one point was a huge hindrance, as you've hinted at. Then the emergence of YouTube really streamlined that and made it considerably easier. But yeah, you just kind of figure those things out as you go.
So at this point, had you formed like a legal company with a partnership?
Once it became pretty clear that this was going to be a serious money-making thing, we incorporated and did all that. But it would have been probably premature to do that much earlier. We probably, it's hard to say if we hit the timing perfectly.
And was it like rock, paper, scissors to see who would be like the CEO, or was it pretty clear?
We had correct me if I'm wrong, Jared, I believe we had like an actual physical fight.
Okay.
Like it was like, I don't remember exactly how that happened, and it wasn't like a negative thing. It was more or less like, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like, yeah, okay. I think it was like one of those, like a spur of the moment, like whoever wrestles the other one down is going to win this thing. And that was like a complete one-off. I don't think we did that.
Got it.
But it was like, I think it was, and he was slightly older. And so between a couple of factors, it was like, I'm quite sure he was the president and all that sort of thing. And
got it.
That kind of settled it.
Yeah, nice.
So he won the physical fight.
So it kind of went from this accidental opportunity to this intentional business.
Yeah.
And once you realize we're onto something, did you kind of put aside the series of websites that you were running, or was that already a distant
That
past?
would have been already a distant past thing, yeah.
And sooner than later, if you're selling all this stuff, you're doing the packaging, you're going to have to start to assemble a team. And I found a picture of that crack team and some of the activities you got up to.
Sure. You'll notice what side of the table all the beer's on. Not mine.
Fair enough. But this is traditional startup lore.
Yeah.
But was this a physical space that you rented in the Fraser Valley somewhere? Or?
Yeah, by this time, it was a meaningful operation. We were above what was then the McGavin's Bread, down near the train tracks, as it happens to be, yeah. And we had a space there. We had a poker table set up. We had a game console set up. All the things you need to attract early employees, apparently.
And it wasn't Drumeo right off the bat. It was.
It was Railroad Media, not because we were located near the train tracks, but as we were discussing ideas, and I think this was my dumb idea, it was like, we train people. And it was enough of a reason, because what we were really looking for is, we knew that we were both very entrepreneurial. We could take this a million directions. We wanted a generic name that gave us maximum flexibility. So we were first and foremost looking for a generic name, and that little story stuck, and we just went with it. You
have to realize I love a good dad joke. So that really gets the thumbs up. So Railroad Media.
Yeah.
Cool. And one thing right off the bat is you started something called freedrumlessons.com.
Yeah.
Why free?
So there's a bit of a story here, but I'll try to give you the short version. One of the things that we recognized early on, and I think this is a version of what I think every business figures out really quickly, is you have to find where your customers already congregate, where your prospects already congregate, right? You got to figure out where people who are looking for what it is that you solve go, so that you can get in front of them. And for our business of selling online music lessons, the clear thing was people were going to Google. And if you're going to Google with a high intent keyword phrase like how to play the drums or learn to play the drums or something like that, it would be very advantageous to show up high in the search results. It was around this time that pay-per-click advertising was emerging, and that was something we were definitely pursuing. But in the early days, that was down the sidebar of Google. You really wanted to be in the normal, natural results. Mm-hmm. And that was far better, even if you're running paid ads down the side. Now, of course, the ads are front and center. Half the time they look like search results. But back then, Google was very, separating these two things, and half the people didn't even look at the ads, right?
Right.
So you wanted to be in the search engines. This is where your customers were if they search for key things. And so there was this recognition that we need to be at the top of the search engine. And so for the first few years, we tried all kinds of different tactics. We'd study all the latest. How do you get to the top of search engines? There are what are called white hat techniques, which is kind of like good faith techniques. There are black hat techniques, how you try to game the system, and ultimately Google is trying to remove you from the listings because you're trying to trick the system into ranking high. And at one point, and this is probably common knowledge today or something that someone would realize pretty easily today, but back then it was a bit of an insight to realize if we want to be at the top of Google, we should just deserve it. We should give the result that Google would dream about serving up to their searchers. And so the idea is, well, what does somebody want to find when they're looking for drum lessons online? Of course, they want to find a completely free, great learning experience with videos that guide you every step of the way and get you up and running. And so we thought this idea was so good, we just took a complete flyer on it because this was, in hindsight, wild that we did this. But we took all the money we had and that we didn't have, and we plowed it into building a massive library of completely free lessons. It completely cannibalized our product. It was better than the product that we were selling. I think just the upfront cost was something like $60,000, but I'm sure there was far more in opportunity costs and just money, going out as the project grows. And we rented a studio in White Rock, and we filmed, 100, 120 videos, something like that. Every video was tailored to specific search phrases, the different rudiments that a drummer might learn, the different types of styles they might be interested in. It was all orchestrated as basically a search engine optimized site, but rather than trying to trick the search engine, it was, here's exactly what people are looking for when they search for either the broader term like drum lessons or free drum lessons or how to play drums, or more specific phrases about the kinds of techniques and things we were teaching. Mm-hmm. And again, in hindsight, I look back and I think that was wild. We completely cannibalized our product. We had no way of knowing this was going to work. It was all based on the idea of if we can be number one in Google and create a great experience, we'll figure out a way to make the money. Mm-hmm. And we'll probably we did have to improve our product then and figure out how to have something even better to offer people. But again, like in hindsight, it's both... obviously it was transformative for the company, but it's still just a wild idea that we were that bold and just took an insane risk.
And another, I think, timing as I researched this is the ability to host these videos was now available to you on YouTube, and you could embed them on this website. And so actually earlier today, I went to your YouTube channel, which is still free, youtube.com/free drum lessons. Yeah. And I went to videos, and you can search by latest, popular, or oldest. And if I went to oldest, I think it's rare for the first video on a channel to have 114,000 views 18 years later. And I thought maybe they deleted some before, but then I realized, no, this was what you were offering. And so I clicked on it, and Jared taught me the different parts of the cymbal and the top and the bottom of the drum, and these still exist. And so freedrumlessons.com as a website doesn't look like that anymore. It looks a little bit more like Drumeo, but it's still there as a kind of a lead magnet of some sort. Yeah. But you can see, like, the second video posted to this has 1.4 million views 18 years later. Yeah. Bad timing, I realize, is these are all 4:3 format in 480p, and it probably was soon after that YouTube upgraded to 16:9, that wide that we're all used to these days, with probably 720p at the time, but then 1080 and 4. But you can still see a pixelated Jared teaching me to do drums, and so Like, talk to me about YouTube and why, like, where was that in your guys' conversation?
Yeah, it was very much an extension of what we were doing with our search engine optimization. YouTube, as people quickly realized, was the number 2 or number 3 search engine in the world. It's different than a search engine, but it's still just a search engine, or especially at that point. Today, it's a lot more algorithmically driven, but at that point, search was the way people found interesting things, and Google was surfacing videos from YouTube in their search results, and so it was a kind of a backdoor into getting higher placement in the Google search results as well. And so, yeah, it enabled us to do freedrumlessons.com. As you noted, the timing wasn't great because we put everything out in 4x3. And they promptly went to 16:9, which made a lot of sense. I think they were kind of unique in actually starting at 4x3. So that immediately made some of the content feel dated. But yeah, it was this recognition that, again, if you want to reach your customer, it's figuring out where they congregate. And if somebody wants to learn the drums, they're going to go to Google, or now they're going to go to YouTube. And so we need to be there as well. And it was just, natural extension. And like you said, it really enabled us to do that kind of streaming.
And so for this batch of 100 videos, you worked with a video production company and they helped you produce them. At what point did you start to say, we need to have our own studio and do some of this production ourselves?
Yeah, so that was all filmed, as you noted, in a studio. Like, we rented a studio, but we did at that point have a few editors on staff that did the editing. My youngest brother, one of them.
Okay.
And so we had a crew that was doing all the post-production, that sort of thing. Well, I say crew, it was one to start, and then it kind of grew from there. But it was a while before we decided to build our own studio. We continued to rent for a while, and then eventually there was this realization. I don't know if there was even a point where it was clear, but it became obvious that we were as much a media company as an education company. Very much, at the intersection of media and education. And fast forward to today, and it's, the media side is a massive part of the business.
Yeah.
And that's a huge bet. In part, like, Jared really saw that vision of, like, let's continue to double down and triple down on this. Social media was a big part of that, and recognizing the need to shift from this focus on search to increasingly, so if search is kind of your direct marketing of, like, okay, we're going to meet people when they're ready to buy, social media obviously is different in that it's a lot more maintaining steady brand awareness, where people know who you are, they can slowly kind of learn to trust your brand, and then if they suddenly want to learn to play the drums, or they know somebody else wants to learn, now you're kind of already top of mind. So search is very, like, high intent, you're waiting for them to express an interest, and social is much more like, just be present, be the brand that everybody knows exists, and then a little different in that way, but yeah. I don't know
no, for sure. And spoiler alert, we're talking about YouTube, but if you click on this YouTube channel today, it has 5.4 million subscribers and 1.3 billion views. Yeah. And if you go back to my story about having a server up here and serving video, you would go, a lot of money for that. But that's all free, right? It's an incredible platform that has so many unique users, and it's just growing. There seems to be no top of what YouTube will become. Right? Yeah. It's now the most popular thing that's shown on TVs and homes, and it's just on and on and on. And I would say from the very get-go, Jared was very charismatic and a good teacher, and you can see he's in the audience, a little bit awkward at first, but really got up to speed quickly and was a real dynamic personality, right?
We still joke about the free drum lessons shoot back in the day. It was the awkward, like, pivot to the other camera and say your line, pivot back. And we had a few different instructors, and like you say, you go through this quick learning curve of figuring out, okay, this is how it works, and be much more yourself. And I think Jared accelerated through that really quick, and we've had a bunch of other instructors that we've worked with as well. It's a learning curve.
We'll jump to the scale, exit, return era of Rick's involvement with Drumeo and Musora. And so in 2015, you'd been going for 10 years. And tell me about kind of the realization that maybe we need to go separate ways, or your thought on your position and so forth.
Yeah, more than anything, that kind of distinct difference in our roles that was the case at the beginning began to kind of bleed together. where there was a clear sense of, if in the early days I was doing the marketing and the business strategy, and in some cases ghostwriting some of the scripts, it was like, Jared was more than capable in all those areas. And there was this growing sense of like, I don't really need to be here. And I had temporarily left the company for a few months or something like that earlier, and I still needed to come back. And so I did. But then by this point, my other brother, Chad, was now in the company leading the marketing department, very capable, if not far superior marketer than myself. I'm more of a generalist. He's actually like really good in that role. And so it became clear that I'm no longer needed in the business. There were a number of decisions that were starting to come up where we would discuss things and we could go one of two ways. Jared had ideas, I had ideas. Either way would have worked, but we can't do both. And there was just this clear sense of like, we probably shouldn't both be doing this. Somebody needs to make the calls. There should be one person leading. And I know there's like this narrative or idea that like these things always have to be messy. It just wasn't. It was like one of these things where it was time for me to...
conscious uncoupling.
Yeah, it was just like, I want to go do some other things. And he was really excited to continue doing this. Yep. And there was just a sense of, the business is at the point where, like I've always had the sense of if I'm not playing an absolutely critical role, I'd rather move on and do something else. Mm-hmm. And so, we just had a conversation, and there was this decision that, okay, I'll take a cash buyout. In addition, I'll take over the guitar business that was kind of a side project or hobby at the time. Mm-hmm. It wasn't getting very much attention at all. So there was a lot of just like untapped opportunity due to sheer neglect because we're so focused on the aspect of the business that was doing really well. And so it's okay, I'll take that over, and I'll take a cash buyout thing, and I'll go do my own thing. And it was just like a very mutual, like, this sounds good, let's do that.
Yeah. And tell me about Guitareo. What did you do with that?
Yeah, so along with leaving the company, the main artist, Nate, who was in the videos, he came along with me, so it was just the two of us. And so I started up the business now, and I'm running Guitareo fully as like my thing now.
And were you in the same building, or did you completely separate?
Totally separate.
Got it.
And so initially we were just marketing the existing products. I was working with Nate. He would be on camera, and I'm running the business. And eventually, I bought my first house. I had an unfinished basement, and I realized, okay, there's a bunker under the garage. It's like perfect for a studio. Mm-hmm. And so very fortunate, because I didn't intend that when I bought the place. But it was like, okay, we can put together our own studio, built our own studio, eventually recruited more staff, had up to 5 plus a contractor in there. I don't think we were allowed to have that many people in the house, but it worked out. We had the office, basically the whole basement was finished to be an office space, and grew Guitareo substantially. It wasn't called Guitareo at the time. Mm-hmm. And then eventually Jared comes knocking and says, hey, I want to bring that one back into the fold. And like, are you interested in selling? And we came to an arrangement that worked out great.
And what had the growth been from that kind of side project to that point? Had it increased in revenue and membership and so forth?
Yeah, we very much doubled down on YouTube. The YouTube channel grew about 10x, I want to say, about that in this kind of 3 or 4 year time frame.
Using the similar recipe and
exactly, just putting in all the time that we would have put in with Drumeo. And so kind of 10x the audience size on that side. Part of it was I owned guitarlessons.com, which was a search engine powerhouse. We were ranked number 1 on Google, so that was huge. And roughly 5x revenue, depending on exactly what month you look at. So substantially more revenue. And it was a great team. Everything was working great. And then Jared says, hey, I want to bring the team back. And I was like, okay, let's do that.
And did that include Rick coming back at that point? Or no? Okay. No. So basically Guitareo went back to Drumeo, and the broader platform that Jared and company were building is now known as Musora. Yeah. And was that in the vision at that point? Okay, we're going to do guitar, and we're going to maybe touch on other pieces?
Yeah, at that point, so even when I took over the guitar division, piano was already a thing. So there was some traction there, even more so than guitar. Kind of hit a more natural stride for whatever reason, less competitive. Guitar is a really difficult instrument, actually, because it is, in many ways, 10 different instruments in one. The students, depending on what they're interested in, can go down a completely different path and have almost no recognition of what somebody else is wanting to learn. So it's a more fragmented instrument. It's far more competitive, but it's considerably more popular. So it's a very unique mix. But at that point, I'm quite sure Jared had visions of uniting. That was the whole idea. So bring guitar back in. Bass was a ways off. Voice was either just getting started or still a ways off. But I'm quite sure that was kind of the vision at that point was, okay, let's round this out. And the Drumeo brand already kind of dominated the drum space, but there were a lot of competitors in the other instruments. And so I think this was a very brilliant move to say, okay, how do we compete in markets where there are already established winners? Well, you kind of go up and capture the larger market and unite these things. And so I think that was very much the vision.
Got it. And at this point, what was your plan for Rick? I'm just going to retire at 40 or
Yeah, that was more or less, I was, as I guess a recurring pattern in my life is just trying new things, sometimes to the detriment. I'm sure I could have greater financial success if I just stayed on one track and just focused. But I wanted to do my own thing. I started up my own YouTube channel, just shared all the different books and things that I was learning. I quickly realized I have a really strong passion for just learning and exploring and sharing what I'm finding. So that ended up being very fulfilling, not from a financial perspective, but just this is what I want to do. If I don't have to, I didn't need to work. And it's this is what I want to do with my time. And so I did that for a while.
And were you involved in the business at all, the Musora?
No.
You've got brothers that work there, and you and Jared are still close. You must be aware of what's going on.
And so one of my brothers has still worked there. But I wasn't maintaining any sort of role. And then at some point we got back together and we're having some discussions, and there was an opportunity to join the board. And so I joined the board at Musora. And then shortly after that, some of the ideas I was proposing around taking the product and the educational experience to a whole new level. It was already a great product, but there were some opportunities to kind of take some of the learnings that had happened over the past few years and take things to the next level. And so there was an opportunity to do that. And from proposing some of these ideas from the board, I got recruited to actually become chief product officer for a couple of years, and got to lead some really great teams, a few dozen super talented people, both on the platform side, so the web app, the mobile app, the kind of the surface that the customer interacts with, as well as reinventing the curriculum. And so it was a chance to, the business has grown substantially since when I was in the business, it was kind of 15 people. That's right. And now it was 150, and there's a ton of just a handful of people that I'd worked with in the past that I was excited to work with again, but also just a pool of talented people.
And something else we haven't talked about yet is another piece of amazing timing for some and awful timing for others is 2020 with a global pandemic and people trapped in their homes.
Yeah.
What a good time to learn an instrument.
Silver lining, right? It's this horrific event, and yet the result is private one-on-one lessons, obviously slowed down dramatically, and a bunch of people rushed online. And so it was a huge boon for the company. A lot more students coming into the fold. So absolutely. There's that timing in there for sure.
And so today, this is what Musora looks like. You've got Pianote, Singio, Drumeo, Guitareo, and play bass. Yeah. Bassio wasn't available, but it's a suite of platforms that all come under one, from my understanding. So if you sign up for Musora, you have access to all of this.
Yes.
Yeah, and you've been, as the chief product officer, spending time envisioning what that would look like and working on special things. Can you tell us a state of the union on the platform and what you got cooking?
Yeah. So basically, when I joined the board, there was this recognition that the product had some things that were really great modern ideas, and it's some things that had just kind of stuck around over a long period of time. There was an opportunity to say, okay, knowing what we now know today, how would we reinvent this product? What are the things that we would double down on? What are the things that we'd scale back on? Like I said, this happened over a long period of time. So you can imagine all the lessons we'd learned, the ideas that were kind of clear winning, proven ideas that were maybe not getting as much time or attention as they should. And then a bunch of other things that were just kind of like content baggage over time. And the platform was complicated and features had come and gone and far too many kind of stuck around when they didn't really make sense anymore. So it was this chance to kind of just stand back and say, okay, today, knowing what we now know, how would we greatly simplify this experience? How would we critically make it far more habit forming so it's more effective at having students stick around and truly see the results they want? How can we take the very best content ideas? I'll give you one quick example, this play to learn format that Jared and the team put together, where instead of just watching a video and having a drum instructor demonstrate some things and then send you off to your kit to practice on your own through the exercises, it was in real time. You're playing with the teacher. You're watching them play exactly what you're to be playing along with them. And kind of the way I would summarize this is the video is the lesson. What you're doing in real time, very much like a Peloton workout, you're supposed to be participating in real time. And if you pace these things correctly, it's a very nice, smooth, gradual transition for students that they can easily keep up with. And critically, a lot of what it takes to become a great musician is just putting in the reps. It doesn't have to be dramatically more complicated from week to week. It's just continuing to show up, putting in the time, and getting stronger at the fundamentals. And so they had some content like this that was clearly really resonating with people, but the core curriculum experience wasn't using that format yet. And so kind of the long and the short of it was you get to look at all this and just say, hey, what if we completely redid our curriculum to really focus on that and make it consistent across all the instruments? What if we greatly simplify the platform? What if we take the most common behaviors in the platform and put them more front and center and sunset or bury all the stuff that is less common so we can make this experience considerably easier and more effective for the student? And so we mapped out a vision for what that might look like. We prototyped it all out, and that's the beauty of modern tools like Figma, where you can actually just almost bring the idea completely to life. And the board and the C-suite all looked at this and they just said, okay, you should run this thing and make it happen. And I had the opportunity, like I said, to work with between the product side, the designers and the PMs and the development teams in the ballpark of 36 people, got to kind of lead the effort to really completely rebuild this experience. And our hypothesis around improving the habit-forming nature of it and really betting on this whole play-to-learn format paid off, and the metrics are just showing through the roof. More people learning more things, getting further, and engaged stronger.
And you say it's a one sentence, redo the curriculum.
And that's where...
Just to put that into perspective, how many videos and online personalities, and because you have an incredible engine, which is your YouTube channel, but I would imagine that the amount of effort into public-facing free videos is dwarfed by what's behind the paywall. The stuff out here is amazing and absolutely watchable, and some of the, I do recommend if you have not spent any time on the Drumeo YouTube channel, it's amazing. It's a full media company with incredible content.
Yeah.
And then I've had the benefit of seeing some of the stuff behind, but that one sentence is tens of thousands of man hours, I would imagine. And where are you at in that process?
Yeah, and so great question. So we rebuilt the platform, we've rebuilt the app, we've greatly simplified that, and obviously a project like this can quickly get out of scope and just become a wild thing. So early on, we made the decision that we are going to focus on first overhauling the beginner segment of the curriculum across the board. The great thing about the beginner segment is, one, a big group of our paying customers are beginners. Two, it's the most predictable experience because everybody starts out knowing nothing, so you know exactly how to deliver a really, truly great experience. And by this point, this is kind of our fifth or sixth stab at overhauling the way that we teach. And so lots of lessons learned around how to really make this a truly great experience. So we decided to start by delivering the best possible first 120-day experience. Just nail that, prove this format, make sure it works as well as we expect it to, and have a roadmap for how we're going to continue to deliver and build out the curriculum to eventually go into more niche subjects. But there was this idea that... If
I could stop you there for
Sure.
a moment, how do you prove the hypothesis that what you've developed in Figma and started to build without overbuilding? Like, how were you testing that? Yeah, we're onto something. This is working. What were the signals that said we're on the right path, or we need to pivot? Like, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, well, what we did was we initially mapped out a long-term vision of what we felt today was our ideal destination. So this was a vision with some pretty bold bets, a lot of ideas we have not yet built. It was kind of like, where do we think we should be in 5 years? Knowing what we know today, it's almost certainly going to change, but it's a North Star that we think right now is where we want to be. So start with the big, if we could do everything, where would we land? And then from there, we scaled back and said, okay, what can we do in the first year that's going to move us in that direction, but is fewer wild bets? It's like, what are the safe ways to improve the product? Where can we simplify? What are the things that absolutely need to be here? A lot of this was borrowing through analogy. So a thing that I tend to do is I look at, okay, what are similar businesses in other industries doing? What are the proven best practices? So if you want to make your product more habit forming, for example, you're going to look to companies like Peloton, like Apple Fitness, like Strava. They don't compete with us, but they have a similar challenge, which is get people to do a thing they know they want to do, they want the outcome of, but it's hard, right? People don't want to practice, people don't want to work out. And so you look to analogous solutions that are outside of your industry and you adopt the proven best practices. We know, here are the low-hanging fruit. People want streaks. People want to be able to track their effort and understand how their journey is developing over time. They want to be told at any given time exactly what to do next in order to see results. And so you take these things that are just low-hanging fruit, clear winners, and you put those in the initial build. And then as you go, you can take more wild bets and try small little additions that maybe you're not quite as confident on. But we're not to that point yet. We've launched that first kind of big revolution of the product, kind of setting the stage for ongoing innovation, and then overhauling the curriculum, starting with beginners.
As I'm listening to all of that, and as an outside observer that knows enough about the company, it seems like a real superpower is how many employees in that 150 plus do you think are musicians?
I'm quite sure it's the majority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it seems to be like when a tech company sees, oh, this is a market, we're going to go after that.
Yeah.
They don't have the humanity or the love, but it seems like there's just an absolute, utter love of music by everybody that I see in the videos and in the control room that you see little bits of. And you mentioned habit forming, and I don't cringe like if I was talking to Mark Zuckerberg and he was telling me about how he makes his platform
more addictive.
You're doing good for the world, right?
Yeah.
So that seems like a superpower to me. Would you agree?
Yeah, very much. And the guiding principle behind this project, and this was all the kind of thing that we mapped out before we really got off the ground, was our mission is to help students fall in love with the journey of learning and playing music. Because if you can do that, the results will come, right? And so you need to help them fall in love with showing up consistently, putting in the time, and practicing their craft. And so that's where the habit forming side of things come, because if you can develop the habit and have these natural triggers where they just show up and continue to practice, if it's fun, if it doesn't feel like it's going to be homework, then now you're able to kind of compete in terms of their time with things like Netflix and other things that might be a little bit more just lay back and I can just watch the TV. I very actively use the product myself, and the goal that we were aiming for is, and I'm very much experiencing this, is it's fun. I look forward to sitting down and working on the instruments that I don't play as well, and diving into bass again for the first time in a long time, guitar, and just having this experience of like, yeah, I'm going to put in my 15 minutes today because it's just casual fun, and the whole time I'm playing with an instructor in real time, and that was very much the goal. Help students fall in love with the actual process of getting better and not just be always dreaming about the goal, the destination.
I'm curious how you're thinking about screens. So I'm thinking maybe there's one drummer, he's looking at a TV that's just outside and it's connected to an Apple TV or something like that, or maybe there's a laptop, or maybe it's like a phone propped up or a tablet. Like, how are people using this application?
Web is very popular. Mobile phone is by far the most popular. But having said that, obviously the better experience is using a tablet or a laptop or something bigger. I tend to gravitate towards the biggest screen I can find.
Right.
But the mobile phone has to be a great experience. And that was another big thing about this redesign, was it was an opportunity to perhaps take a long overdue rethink from a mobile first perspective. And this very much aligns with wanting simplicity, is when you're forced to make everything look great on a small screen, you just have to make it simple. Mm-hmm. And so all of the initial prototyping work was completely done on a mobile device. And then from there, it's easy to kind of blow it up and make extra use of the additional screen space you have. Mm-hmm. But yeah, mobile device ends up being the most popular, but it also creates this really nice constraint where it's like, it better be easy to use on mobile. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah, that's incredible. I don't want to spend the entire time talking about Musora and Drumeo, et cetera, but it was such an important part of your life, and we're going to have much better questions coming from the audience in a little bit here, but you've really kind of shifted gears back and forth, and a key thing has been learning and education. Yeah. It's been a thread through your life, and one thing I find that you underplay everything you've done. You're a humble guy, but you said, when I sold Guitareo back, or I'd maybe start a YouTube channel and so forth. But you didn't just start a YouTube channel. You grew a YouTube channel in the same way, and in a very short order. You started this in, I think, 2022.
2019.
Yeah. And then I was looking again, doing all my sleuthing. There's an active creation of close to 400 videos, and then a stop. Yeah. And I realized, that's when he got recruited back to be the chief product officer.
Yeah.
But I
can only do one thing at a time.
but again, I've got stats on the next one, but I'll play 30 seconds of one of these. It's not Rick with a selfie stick. I'm going to create an amazing studio. I'm going to buy thousands of dollars worth of physical books to make a beautiful backdrop and do a ton of research.
This is the second video in a brand new series where we take a look at two or more seemingly contradictory books, where the ideas and insights from one popular book appear to contradict with the insights and ideas from another popular book. Now, in the last episode, we took a look at The Lean Startup by Eric Ries versus 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. And in this episode, we're going to look at The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss and how it compares to Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk.
So this channel, you joined in 2019. You grew to 97,000 subscribers in the course of a couple years. There's 355 videos. There's 7 million views. The last video was posted in 2023. I'm just asking for a friend that will post this video, and I'll be thrilled if we get 500 views. Tell us some tricks or just some practices on how to get traction and just create something like this.
Sure. I can give you a few different ideas. One big thing that I've focused on personally, a strength of mine, is obviously my background in search engine optimization. So very much when I'm creating content, I'm always thinking of what are the things that people are looking for, what are people searching for. I've had a lot of success with, top 10 marketing books and these kinds of lists ideas where people are searching for best marketing books on a platform like YouTube. So first and foremost, it's understanding, again, who's your ideal audience? Where can you meet them? What are the things that they are looking for? And so that's a big thing that I've focused on. Perhaps to the detriment of other areas. So one area where, and I mentioned this to you on our call, where I'm not nearly as strong, and very much this is where Jared has taken things to the next level, is understanding the value of the network effects and other things that come from bringing on big name people and having content that jumps out to you based on the algorithm, where maybe you're not actively searching for it, but when you see it, it appeals to you. And of course, YouTube is increasingly moving in this direction. Search is still a big part of it. But one thing I hope to explore further as I'm cycling back into an era of revisiting the channel is figuring out how you catch people on an ongoing basis, how you play into the algorithm. One example, even though this is probably not the approach I'll take, but I'm sure everybody in this room has seen the approach of what's called newsjacking, where you take something that's active and happening in the news and is being actively discussed, and you do your spin on it, or you somehow look for the overlap, the Venn diagram between here's what my channel's about, here's the big event that's happening in the news, and how can I, maybe something that's right now really popular. There was a book that was published 20 years ago that reveals secrets about this thing, and you somehow connect these ideas, and that's a way to kind of capitalize on trends that are happening on the platform where it jumps out. But definitely the thing that I've really focused on in the past has been understanding the value of search engines, phrases, and how to deliver on that. But if anything, I want to explore the other more as I get back into the channel. But
Cool.
yeah.
Let's talk about where you are now with things. And you've got another related, but a bit of a curveball.
Sure.
You have a real passion about, you've got 3 kids.
Yeah.
And you're worried about the future of AI and so forth, and preparing young people. Tell me about this project.
Sure. Well, it actually relates to the YouTube project. So at one point, I came across this book called Write Useful Books. Never imagined I would write a book in my life. But I read the book, and it was from an author of another startup book called The Mom Test, which is a brilliant kind of cult classic in the startup world. And I thought, I'll read his other book, Write Useful Books. Might be interesting. And was very much inspired to create a book of my own, having gone through that. And as you kind of alluded to, I've got 3 boys, 3 young boys. And one thing that's been on my mind for at least 15 years now, and it's, if I'm being brutally honest, the reason why my wife and I delayed having kids initially was just growing uncertainty in the world. We got married in 2008, and by the time you start thinking about having kids, maybe the early 2010s. And for me, and I tend to overthink things, but I was very much thinking like AI is inevitable, a bunch of this technology is inevitable, the speed of technology is accelerating. A whole slew of reasons to be kind of concerned about the future or just the growing uncertainty. And I wasn't particularly interested in bringing kids into this very uncertain world. And at the very same time, for me personally, if I thought about how I view uncertainty, I'm relatively confident dealing with uncertainty. And I'm not too worried about what's going to happen down the road. I feel like I'm going to be able to adapt and figure things out. So there's this weird dichotomy where I'm like, I don't know what I want to bring a child into the world, and yet why am I confident? And so there was this realization that, I should look at how I was raised, look at the latest kind of expert perspectives on how to prepare kids for uncertainty, things like developing problem-solving skills, developing confidence, how to learn, how to adapt. And I put together a book project that was entirely geared around that, where I'm not the expert. I'm doing the research. I'm talking to my dad about his upbringing and how he was raised, and then marrying that again with the latest expert advice and just saying, okay, how can I, as a father, most effectively raise my kids to have these kinds of timeless skills that are going to set them up for success no matter what the future holds. I don't know why that was like a breakthrough for me, but I suddenly had this realization that obviously you can't predict the future. So all you can do is develop the skills that allow you to navigate an uncertain future. And again, things like problem solving, curiosity, and nurturing curiosity is a huge one. And just providing lots of ample opportunity for diverse life experience. And so this is the book, Dinnertime Conversations, 8 Principles for Raising Confident, Independent, and Future-Proof Kids. And the whole concept is how do you build, and Dinnertime Conversations, you might connect the dots and realize this is about how do you develop a ritual or a habit that actually works for people over time to follow through on the ideas. Very similar to the approach with Musora and the product, and realizing this life is a journey. You're going to be raising your kids for a decade or 2, and you need a system that's going to work. And so I built all the principles around the concept of, first and foremost, having a dedicated time to share and connect, understand their interests, understand their passions, but then critically, how do you subtly in a way that's not stealing their sense of autonomy, gently nudge the opportunities to develop problem-solving skills, to take on increasingly difficult challenges, to find out what they're passionate about, and to nurture opportunities for them to develop those things and gain a true deep sense of confidence where they know at the end of the day, they can learn anything they want to learn. They can't learn everything, but if there's something meaningful that they want to do, then they can do it. And so, yeah, I put this book together. It's a relatively short read, but it's just, it was as much for me to kind of firm up and get clear on how I want to raise my kids as it was putting together a thing that I hope will be very useful for other people.
And so you published it in December 2025.
Yeah.
It's on Amazon. Did you self-publish? Do you work with a publisher?
Yeah. So I self-published it. I'm still, at the time, I was still in my role at Musora.
Yep.
I was in this awkward phase where I'm really enjoying what I'm doing at Musora, and at the same time, this is in the back of my mind as something that I've been, I'd finished the book at that point for a while, and I didn't have the time or energy to really give it the focus it deserved. As I kind of hinted at earlier, I can only really do one thing at a time. But now that it's published, and as of the beginning of this month, I've moved back to the board at Musora. I'm no longer in a full-time role. I wanted my time back, and it was one of those things that kind of just worked out perfectly. And now my intent is to really focus on spreading this and some of the related ideas, and kickstart up the YouTube channel again, and find ways to spread these ideas and related ones.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Let's hear it for Rick. I do have a series of rapid fires that I'm going to fire at you.
Sure.
And I'm going to keep them short.
Okay.
Keep them short, the answers.
I'll try to.
Biggest mistake that mattered the most over the last 25 years?
Not reading enough diverse books earlier in life. I think there are like two categories of mistakes. There are mistakes that you have to make in life just to learn, and then there are mistakes you could avoid entirely by just benefiting from the experience of others. And while I started reading early in life with a lot of how to build websites, how to this, I didn't read broadly just to absorb lessons that other people had already figured out. Mm-hmm. And I think that could have eliminated, like, that one mistake caused a slew of others. So I wish I read more broadly and more diversely earlier on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thinking back to the 16-year-old Rick, what advice would you give him? I'll tell him a piece of advice: get a bag with wheels.
That's good.
But what would you tell 16-year-old Rick?
I'll borrow the title from one of my favorite product books, and that is "Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution." And in business in general, rather than obsessing about, here's this piece of tech or here's this idea and I want to find a way to turn this into a product, instead obsess about the problem you intend to solve for people, and get really clear who you're trying to solve it for, what they actually need, not the thing they ask for. What is the underlying need? People don't just want to learn to play the drums. They want a creative outlet. They want to connect with other people. They want to have something that is a passionate hobby in their life. So what is the actual problem you're solving? Get very clear on that. Identify who you're trying to solve it for, and then let the solutions and stuff percolate, but don't start with solutions and work backwards to how you're going to turn this into some product.
Great. Shorter this time.
Okay. More rapid.
What skill will matter most in the next 10 years?
Nurturing, developing your natural curiosity.
Perfect. I know what you're building now. Mm-hmm. Here's one for you.
Okay.
How can people follow what you're doing?
YouTube is the best, because I'm going to be kickstarting that back up really quickly here. But I do post. I don't participate because I don't like all the social platforms. But I do post to Instagram, TikTok, all the different things. If you just search for Rick Kettner, all one word, you'll find me on all the video-based platforms.
And if someone sends you a private message that doesn't seem like spam on LinkedIn, will you answer them? Possibly.
I occasionally check in on LinkedIn.
Sounds
very,
good.
very occasionally.
All right. Well, let's hear it for Rick. We do have some time for some questions. Our number one initial question asker is ready. Colin, what do you got?
Thanks so much for sharing. It's great to learn from you what you've learned. My question is, thinking about the kid at the dinner table in the context of your new book, how do you help those kids who really haven't yet found their passion find something to be passionate about that they can actually chase? Because that does appear to be a more common problem today than perhaps it was in previous decades.
Sure. Really great question. The second principle of the book is entirely about that idea, which is very much creating opportunities for kids to discover and try many different things, and not putting the pressure at all for them to have to stick with a thing for any predetermined amount of time. It's just maximizing the surface area of them getting to try many things. I'm a big believer in the idea of, I think Adam Adam Grant put it this way, and I really like this: fit, not grit. It's figuring out what, and I think you're kind of already there. You're trying to figure out how to assess that, but that's very much the idea, is just create ample opportunity for them to try or witness other people doing interesting things, let them dabble, and wait for them to show a deeper interest. But I think my parents did an excellent job of that. There are, of course, expensive outlets, but not everything has to be expensive. It can be going to the library. It can be going to local social events. It can be, just basically, I think my parents kind of went in natural rhythms of, we were a camping family, and then we were a sports family, and then and just trying lots of things. And then when we showed an interest, I know this is largely where you're trying to go with it, is then they were there to subtly support. And one of my favorite bits of wisdom from my grandfather is never be more interested in your kids' hobbies or interests than they are. And so once they're interested, I think the mistake that we often make is like, okay, they're interested in playing the piano. Let's get them the brand new piano. Let's get them set up and sign them up for private lessons. And suddenly we've stolen their autonomy, and it's all about us, and we're trying to be hero, and it's their journey ruined. And so, the direct answer would just be creating as many opportunities as possible for them to try things and then see what sticks. I hope that was helpful.
As we transition to another question, I see there's a slide that I missed. I have to give you a link and some homework. Jared and company put out the history of Musora probably 2-3 months ago, and it's a 22-minute documentary that's well worth watching. It'll fill in a lot of the holes, but it was my key source of research in talking to you today. So it's a really great video to watch. So do we have any other questions? Chris.
That was great, Rick. Thanks very much, both of you guys. My question is about Musora. You mentioned Peloton a couple of times.
Yeah.
And another company that found a lot of traction during COVID.
Yeah.
That's a company that has sort of fallen off a cliff recently.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was the difference between the post-COVID success that Musora has continued to find and what maybe might have happened to Peloton that's different?
Sure. I'll give you my immediate reaction, which is all I can really do. And I think a big part of it was that Peloton was investor funded and was driven very much off of kind of that hype cycle. And also the fact that their business involves a considerable physical product up front was no doubt an issue. And then they hit supply chain issues at the very time. But the fact that Musora has been bootstrapped from day one created a lot more stability, where you're not just riding these waves of investor enthusiasm. You're really just grounding it in what works and what are the customers willing to buy. And so the pandemic, again, this horrific event that had this silver lining, was just pure upside. No doubt there's still some turbulence. I wasn't active in the business at the time, so I can't dive into the details. That was very much Jared navigating that. But it's like almost entirely upside and navigating acceleration without going crazy. And because it was not investor funded, you kind of dodge a lot of that just unnatural hype and unnatural hiring, and you avoid a lot of those pitfalls. But yeah.
Thanks. That was really, really good. I have a lot of questions actually, but I'll just, I think, stick to one. Just being on social media, I mean, I'm not on it a lot, but it's nauseating how saturated it is with people being experts, and everyone's trying to sell the same thing, whether it's fitness or wellness or leadership or life coaching or whatever it is. It's just overwhelming. Who do you choose? But there are a lot of good people out there with a lot of good things to say. You're doing stuff here, right? Yeah. So how do those people just stand out, be different? Like, what's next? Because everyone's doing it on Instagram. I mean, obviously, YouTube, you still believe in YouTube because you're doing YouTube stuff. But what is next for those people who want to stand out and grow something? You have to kind of grow digitally these days. I mean, you can't do it unless you want to stay local. But what is that? Is it AI? How does it incorporate to? I think people are still really wanting that person. Like you guys have those videos with live people.
Yeah.
He took my drink. I really need it. So yeah, how do they stand out? Where do you go? How do you do that? What's next?
Really good question. There's a few different things there. at least part of the answer is almost certainly going back to that idea of starting with the problem rather than the solution, getting really clear on who you intend to serve and what it is that they really, truly need. One of the big bets at Musora, and I'll cycle back to how this is relevant, is the recognition that an instrument is a very human-based activity, and while AI is almost certainly going to play a role in some ways in how we personalize things and tailor things to students, you have to start with what are people actually wanting? They want to play music with other people, and playing music is a very human thing. And so not getting too obsessed about technology unless it's relevant. And so I think it very much starts with what is a genuine problem you're interested in solving for people, exploring who is the best person to start with, because it's not always the destination, right? We might, for example, at Musora think that the greatest opportunity is in kind of intermediate to advanced students and getting to bring in the world's best. But you also recognize that there's a beachhead to be had at the beginner student base. It's easier to create content for them. It's easier to branch out and eventually fund everything else you want to do. So it's starting with what is the problem, who's your ideal starting audience, which might not be your ideal ending audience, and then figuring out, okay, does AI play a role? Is it actually additive? And then critically, trying to get more to the heart of your question is, where do those people go for solutions? Because it might not be online. It might be. That's the big trends for a lot of things, but it doesn't have to be. We're here in person talking about things because this is a great format. There's a slew of ideas, one of which I was talking about before we showed up here. I'm not going to dive into the details of it, but there are all kinds of ideas that might not involve technology at all. And I think as we move towards a world where AI continues to transform so much of society, there's going to be a boon and opportunities for creating more human experiences and figuring out how to thread that needle. And one of the things that we talk about at Musora is, let's imagine a scenario, and I hope, again, this is relevant to your question. Let's imagine a scenario where AI enables, digital, real communism that works. We all get paid because the computers are doing the work, and everybody's bored, and they don't have any passions in life. Well, I tend to be a big believer that people are going to return to nostalgic hobbies and nostalgic social activities, and they're going to want to do them in a nostalgic way with real people and not just staring at a screen all day. And so for some categories of problems, and I don't know if this is where you'll end up landing, but for some categories of problems, you might want to zig when everybody's zagging and figure out, what can we do in person? What can we do that kind of elevates the human nature of it? And I think as digital experiences get increasingly commoditized, while that's not going to be the solution for everything, I think there are going to be genuine opportunities to actually go the other way and create an oasis for people that are just flat out sick and tired of the social scroll and the doom scrolling and all this stuff. So, but ultimately it comes down to knowing who you're trying to serve and where can you find them. Yeah, I hope that was useful.
Yeah, thank you.
Got time for one more question.
Hi, my name is Ash. Thank you, Rick, so much for sharing your stories. Really inspirational. Well-deserved success, and congratulations on the book launch. I just wanted to talk a bit about a couple of things you mentioned. Zig when everyone is zagging, and also about your success with SEO,
Sure.
with free guitar lessons and also free drum lessons.
Yeah.
From your stories, I get that you were really good at guessing what the next thing would be in terms of Google search results in the early 2000s, and later on with starting another thing with other social media platforms like YouTube. In this age of AI, with so much content, I'm pretty sure if I started something like free guitar lessons, nobody would look at it because it's so saturated. What is your advice for people who are starting out? And what would you have done if you were to start in 2026 with guitar lessons or drum lessons or anything of that sort, when there is so much saturation in the internet and there is AI everywhere?
That's a very good question. I think we tend to, and I'm certainly guilty of this, I think we tend to overestimate the saturation effect. And I think there's far more opportunity even today. I know this is like a recurring theme that the digital marketers and the YouTube gurus and all that will say out there is like, it's, the best time to start a YouTube channel was 18 years ago or whatever. But the next best time is now. And I genuinely believe that. Like, I think it's not too late by any stretch. As I get back into my YouTube channel, and it has some existing traction, but I'm basically starting again and kicking it off. And I think more than anything, it comes down to, is there some unique way that you can serve people? I have a good friend who actually started up. He did content for Guitareo a while back, and he started up his own channel to create guitar lessons. He broke with the standard pattern of serving the beginner first and foremost. He went intentionally towards kind of the dead space of intermediate and above, and he created content entirely for that audience, and he's gained incredible traction. I think he's over 250,000 subscribers now in like half the time that I've hit my traction. And he did it by identifying an area that was underserved, that, as you mentioned, zigging when everybody's zagging. There's lots of competitors all chasing the beginner market, and he intentionally just chose to go and do something totally different. He's balked at the idea completely of AI, and for good reason. There's a lot of criticism in the use of AI relating to music and that sort of thing. And he's found incredible traction, again, starting relatively recently. And of course, he learned some things having worked in these businesses, and so he got a little bit of a sense of how to make these things work. But he's really built a thing entirely of his own. And so I would encourage you and anybody else, if there's it's not too late, and B, as long as you know what problem you're trying to solve, it doesn't even matter if other people are solving it. If you can present it in a unique way that's more interesting or more relevant to a certain segment of people, I firmly believe the opportunity is still out there. So I hope that was useful.
I said that was the last one. Anybody a last taker? Or are we good? Let's hear it for Rick.